Hi folks, welcome to another Relive the Music video, and this one is all about the year 2004. So coming up a wee bit later on, I'll be talking about some memorable album releases for Green Day and also Alter Bridge. And when we get to the gigs, and there's a lot of them, there's about 20 or so, I'll be talking about Scotland's own Download Festival, which featured not only Metallica, but Linkin Park and others. And I'll be mentioning the first time that I got a glimpse of Bullet for My Valentine. But to set the scene up to that point, I'll go over some of the news events from the year, some of the TV shows and the films that were out, the top 3 songs in the UK, and then the album releases, and we'll finish with the gigs. So if you don't know my name by now and you're new to the channel, my name is Ricky, and the channel is called Relive the Music. Okay, so I'll start with a big hello to some of my returning viewers who I know will be watching. So that's Ian C, City Build Minecraft, Glasgow Harley Rider and Good Guy Chucky. So I do appreciate your support, and anyone who's joining in for the first time, if you want a mention in the channel, then just drop a note in the comments. I don't actually get notified of who watches these videos, so I think you need to have a Gmail account to leave a comment, but if you leave a comment, then I'll give you a mention on next week's video. Okay, also a big shout out to my friends who I know will be watching as well, and you know who you are. Okay, so in 2004, World of Warcraft was launched, and this is a hugely massive multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG for short. And as of 2014, it had over 10 million subscribers. It was also the year that Mark Zuckerberg and friends created Facebook and launched it. And you might know it now, it's been rebranded as Meta, short for Metaverse. This was also the year that Gmail was launched, or Google Mail. And don't forget, you need to have a Gmail account to be able to comment on my videos. In American football, in the Super Bowl, the New England Patriots defeated the Carolina Panthers, with Tom Brady being voted the most valuable player. But you might remember this most famously for the halftime show. This was the one where Justin Timberlake ripped off a part of Janet Jackson's top and revealed her boob to the audience. I remember watching this at the time. It was put down as a wardrobe malfunction. Yeah, of course it was. It wasn't publicity for her at all. Okay, the Nintendo DS was also released, and this sold over 150 million units worldwide. This was a small handheld video game device which had 2 screens in it, one up the top and one at the bottom, and could fold over. Sadly, Christopher Reeves, who played Superman in the 1978 film and then 3 of the sequels, he passed away at the age of 52. In the football world, the European Championships were held in Portugal, and Greece turned out the surprise winners, beating Portugal 1-0 in the final. They'd already beat Portugal in the earlier opening group stage, and they'd also beaten France, who were the reigning World Cup and European champions. And sticking with Greece, the Summer Olympics were actually held there, and Britain did not too bad. They won 30 medals, 9 gold, 9 silver and 12 bronze. And some of those golds, you might remember, there was 2 golds for Kelly Holmes. She won an 800 metres and a 1500 metres. The men won the 4x100 metres relay. And there was also golds for Chris Hoy and Bradley Wiggins in some of the cycling events. In the TV world, the popular sitcom Friends aired its final episode. So this successful series had been running for 10 seasons long. And the final episode had a viewing audience of 51 million people in the US and 9 million in the UK when it was shown there a couple of weeks later. We also had the launch of Peppa Pig this year. So this was a animated kids cartoon. It's about 5 or 10 minutes long, and it features on a central character, Peppa, who's a pig, and her mum and dad and her little brother George. And there's also various other animal characters in each episode. Okay, and the last one I'll talk about is the TV series Lost, and this contains elements of supernatural fiction and follows the survivors of a commercial plane crash somewhere in the South Pacific Ocean. So it was reportedly one of the most costliest TV series made at the time, with even the pilot episode costing $14 million. I remember this well because it was about the first kind of real major TV show that I had binge watched, and I remember everybody in my work at the time, we all get copies of the episodes burnt onto a DVD by somebody, and we were requesting all the seasons to watch it. But it was a really enjoyable watch. Each kind of episode featured on something different. It was like a flash forward or a flashback, and you would get to know about different characters' storylines. I really enjoyed that though. In the movie world, the number 3 best-selling film of the year was The Passion of the Christ, which I've never seen. Second best-selling film of the year was Spider-Man 2. And the top-selling film of the year was Shrek 2. Okay folks, so just remember it's Father's Day here in the UK shortly, so if you haven't got your dad a gift, now is the perfect time to do so. So I would highly recommend a set of earplugs if they go to gigs, keep them nice and safe. Or if they're working from home, you can't do wrong with this phone stand. I own a couple of these, one in my work and one for home. So you can stack your phone that way or put it that way if you want to play something. And if you want something a wee bit more expensive, then you can't go wrong with this nice watch here. I've got a couple of these bad boys, and I wouldn't recommend anything to you that I don't think is good myself or that I own. So if you're interested in any of these items, I'll leave links in the description below. Okay, so now to the best-selling songs in the UK this year. So coming in at number 3 was the Cha Cha Slide by DJ Casper. Who all remembers this song? You might still hear it at parties these days. So it goes slide to the left, move to the right, crisscross, crisscross. That was cool, a wee catchy tune. So apparently he created that song for his nephew, who was a fitness instructor, and he was trying to get a routine for the people that had signed up to his class. That's how that came about. The number 2 best-selling song, and I had to listen to this because I don't recall this, but apparently it spent 4 weeks at number 1 in the UK, was Fuck It, I Want You Back by Eamon, who is an American singer-songwriter from New York City. And the number 1 best-selling single was the 20th anniversary re-recording of Do They Know It's Christmas by Band Aid. So it's called Band Aid 20 because it was 20 years on. So this featured a whole host of popular artists at the time, and it actually only featured 2 from the 1984 cover, which was Bono and Paul McCartney. Right folks, so now on to the album. So I'm going to start with Green Day and the album American Idiot. So this was Green Day's 7th studio album, and it had 13 songs on it, lasting 57 minutes long. And it had hits such as the title track American Idiot, also Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Wake Me Up When September Ends, and Jesus of Suburbia, which clocked in at 9 minutes and 8 seconds long, making it their second longest song ever recorded. And that's one of my personal favourites because within the actual song there's like a few sort of smaller songs, if you like. And I was lucky enough to catch Green Day live in concert last year at Wildhearts Park in Glasgow as part of their 20th anniversary tour of American Idiot, and they also played the album Dookie in full as well because it was 30 years since that was released. Okay, the band 36 Crazy Fists, which were a kind of metalcore band, they released the album A Snow-Capped Romance, and that gave us singles such as The End of August, which was the first song that I'd ever heard from them and got me into them, Bloodwork, and Destroy the Map. The metalcore band A Trio, named after a dog out of the Never Ending Story film, which is true, I didn't make that up. They gave us their second album called Bleeding Mascara, which had 13 tracks on it and lasted 43 minutes long. It spawned the singles Right Side of the Bed, which was the first track I'd heard by them and made me buy the album. Also Bleeding Mascara and The Crimson. There was also some other great songs on it, such as You Eclipsed by Me and the Remembrance Ballad. Papa Roach gave us their fourth studio album, which was called Getting Away with Murder, and this had 12 tracks on it, lasting 38 minutes. This was a change of direction from the band, moving to a more alternative and hard rock sound, and it didn't feature any rapping on the songs like it did in their previous 3 albums. It's 3 singles taken from this album, which were Getting Away with Murder, Take Me, and probably the most personal favourite of mine, which was Scars. Okay, Slipknot released their third album, which was called Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, and this had 14 tracks on it, lasting 60 minutes long. And my favourite tracks from the album are Pulse of the Maggots and Duality. I'm not the biggest Slipknot fan, but I do love hearing Duality when that comes on. It's just such a great song. I push my fingers into my eyes. Okay, Welsh rockers Lost Prophets released their second album, which was called Start Something, and this had 13 tracks and it lasted 56 minutes long. It had some really good standout tracks on it, such as Burn Burn, Start Something, Last Train Home, and Last Summer. And I really enjoyed this album, and I do need to talk about the album because despite what happened to them years down the line, at the time that this came out, obviously nobody could foresee that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't know the history, then just Google what happened to Lost Prophets and you'll find out. So I found out when I was researching this that actually, even nowadays, since Watkins' conviction in 2012, this album actually gets 60,000 plays a month. Okay, Alter Bridge gave us their debut album One Day Remains, and this was 11 songs lasting 55 minutes long, and it had 3 singles taken from it, which were Find the Real, Open Your Eyes and Broken Wings. So when I was researching this, I actually found out that the name for the album One Day Remains comes from the band members' attitudes that basically life should be lived as if one day remains. So one of the most favourite tracks on that album is actually In Love and Memory, and that was written by Mark Tremonti shortly after the death of his mother. And another sort of fact about this album is how I got into Alter Bridge in the first place. The first track that I'd heard, and you probably know it, is called Metal Lingus. And this was used by the WWE wrestler Edge as his theme tune at the time. So I'd heard that getting played on WWE, which I used to watch from time to time, and thought that's dead catchy. Looked up and found out it was them, liked the song, and then bought the album, and then the rest is history. Okay folks, so now to the gigs, and there's quite a lot to get through. So first up, we're starting with this one, which was the NME Awards Tour, and this was at the Carlin Academy, which is now the O2 Academy in Glasgow. So there's 4 bands on it. I can't remember the first couple, but second in the bill was Franz Ferdinand, and the song I remember from that was Take Me Out. That was the one that they had as a single that was quite catchy. And the headliners for this were Funeral for a Friend, and they'd obviously just had the album Casually Depressed and Deep in Conversation out the year beforehand. And so yeah, they played mainly songs from this album, and I think they played about 12 or 13 songs from memory. Obviously it wasn't as long as what it would normally be, just because there was several bands on the bill. Okay, so next up, another favourite of mine, and that's the Wildhearts. And this was at the Garage. So they played 16 songs in total. They had 4 off of The Wildhearts Must Be Destroyed, which was their most recent album the year before. And they opened the show, like they did for quite a while back then, with I Wanna Go Where the People Go. And they closed on Love You Till I Don't. So it was a good set list, strong throughout. You know, they had favourites in there of mine, such as Sick of Drugs, and also Vanilla Radio from the most recent album. That's nice and catchy. And what I've said before was my number 1 song, although it might be different now, but at the time, Weekend, 5 Long Days from the Don't Be Happy Just Worry album. I do remember them singing that, like halfway through it breaks down and it goes into audience participation mode, where it goes, at the weekend, baby, baby, at the weekend. Just gets the crowd to to sing along and go, at the weekend, baby, baby. And I went on for like about 5 minutes, if I remember, but I was loving it. So yeah, good to see Ginger and the guys. Right, so I didn't need to wait long to see Funeral for a Friend again, having seen them at the start of the year in the awards tour. So it was here at the Barrowlands, £11 for a gig, eh? So this was good. They were obviously playing mainly tracks from the Casually Depressed and Deep in Conversation album, but I do remember they had played quite a few songs from the 7 Ways to Scream Your Name EP that they had out before. So they had the Art of American Football and also 10.45 Amsterdam Conversations. I think they opened the show with Rookie of the Year, which is the opening track off of Casually Depressed, and you also had other songs in there such as Escape Artists Never Die and Red is the New Black. So yeah, it was good to see these. And this was like a prominent time for Welsh rock. You had obviously Funeral for a Friend, Lost Prophets were getting established, and soon to be Bullet for My Valentine. Okay, next up for me was the band W.A.S.P. And this was at the Glasgow Garage. So this was the first time that I would see W.A.S.P. And I first got into them when I bought a cassette recording of Live in the Raw album out of a record shop called Missing, which was in Oswald Street in Glasgow. And I remember paying, I think it was like $1.99 or $2.99, and I bought the Poison Swallow This Live album in the same day, and that's what got me into them. Anyway, they played 13 songs this night. This was in the Neon Gods World Tour, but they actually only played 2 songs from that album, and they concentrated mainly on the first album, playing 5 songs from that. So on the night, they played songs such as On Your Knees, I Wanna Be Somebody, The Manimal, Inside the Electric Circus, and they closed with Blind in Texas. I love the way he says that in the thing. Just like goes, Glasgow, blind in Texas. Okay, so next up is quite a special event, and this is called Download Scotland. And this was a watered down version of the Download Festival. So you had these bands that were going to be playing in a couple of days' time. So this was actually held on a Wednesday and on a Thursday. So you get a ticket there. It was £39.50, so £79 for the 2 days. And it still featured some really good bands playing here. So on the Wednesday, first up we had Him. And this is the one and only time that I'd seen them. So I remember they played Buried Alive by Love, and they played a cover of the Chris Isaak 1980s song Wicked Game. So that was pretty good. I mean, it started later in the afternoon. I think it was like a 3 p.m. start when the gates opened, and we were lucky again. I'm pretty sure the weather was decent. It wasn't raining anyway. Next up we had Korn, and I think this might have been the first time that I've seen Korn. I've never actually seen Korn playing on their own. I've only ever seen them as part of like festivals or on a bill with other bands. But anyway, they played about 14 songs, including Got the Life, Here to Stay, Falling Away From Me, and Chutes and Ladders. And I'm trying to remember if he came out wearing a kilt and playing the bagpipe. I know he's done that a few times before. I couldn't actually find any footage or any news on this, so if anybody was there, if they can remember, then please help me out with that one. So it was a really strong set list throughout on their show, and it was good to see them, and they finished on the song You'll Want a Single. Okay, so next up in the bill, or second last on, was Slipknot, and they played 12 songs, and this was spread across 5 from their debut album, 4 from Iowa, and 3 from their most recent offering at the time. So they closed with Surfacing, but they also played hits such as the Heretic Anthem, Spit It Out, People Equal Shit, Wait and Bleed, and the favourite from me for the day was Duality. Okay, so last up in the bill was Metallica, and this was great to see Metallica again, having saw them 8 years prior in their last time in Scotland at the Barrowlands. And they played a really strong set. There was 18 tracks in total that they played. So they opened with Blackened, which I was pleased about, and they also played stuff like Ride the Lightning, Fade to Black, St Anger, Sad But True, Creeping Death, Wherever I May Roam, One, Sandman, and they ended with Seek and Destroy. So I actually did find some footage of this, but I can't play it for copyright reasons, so I'm just showing you some of the still images from that footage. Now, there is a video, like I say, but it's only about 5 minutes long, but you can actually see it if you visit Metallica's website. I screen recorded it onto my channel so that I had a copy of it, but it's a bit blurrier, so I'll put the link in the comments, or rather in the description below, so you can go and check it out, because it's a kind of wee medley. You see snippets of Ride the Lightning and Blackened and a couple other songs, and it's quite funny just when you look back and you see the footage of Glasgow Green and you see the statue thing in the background and everybody there. Also managed to find a fan snippet of sound, filmed as if you're in the crowd, so I'll play this for you now and you can hear it. Okay, I should also add that obviously if you're not aware, that as well as looking at that footage on Metallica's website, which is metallica.com, you can actually buy the audio from it, and it's only about £10 or something. And that is something that I've done before. I did that in the 2012 one when I saw them at Download Festival, and also when I caught them at the Hydro in 2017. So the quality on it's pretty good. So if you were there and you want a keepsake and you didn't know that was available, then you can go and check it out. Okay, so now on to Download Scotland Day 2, and it's still £39.50 to get in. And this was a really sunny day, so we're really lucky. Like the last few years at these events, we managed to have good weather. So yeah, who'd have thought it, eh? So I can't remember who was first up on the bill. It might have been Lost Prophets, and this would have been the first time that I would have saw them. So they did like 7 or 8 songs. The actual set list is quite unclear. I couldn't actually source it, but it's believed to be that they played songs like Burn Burn, Last Train Home and Last Summer. So that was enjoyable seeing them for the first time. Okay, next up in the bill was Machine Head. And they actually played a lot of songs. They played 16 songs in total, including opener Imperium, which was my favourite off of the Through the Ashes of Empires album. And they also did songs such as 10 Ton Hammer, The Blood, The Sweat, The Tears and Davidian. Okay, second last on the bill was Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And to be honest, I'm not really a fan of Iggy Pop. I know the song The Passenger and that's about it. So I remember watching him on stage. I think usually normally prances about with his top off, but I'm not really a fan. Like, I took it in, but I don't really have anything much to say about it. Okay, last up in the bill and closing this day and closing the 2-day festival was Linkin Park. And this was great. This was an honour to see them, the first time seeing them, hot off the heels of the success of Hybrid Theory and Meteora. So they played 17 songs in total. It featured 8 songs from Hybrid Theory and 7 off of the Meteora album and a couple of covers. I think there was a 9 Inch Nails cover in there. So yeah, it was strong. You know, it had some sort of remix versions in there as well. You know how they had that sort of album where they had various sort of rappers and they played about with some of the tracks. So there was a few sort of reanimated like openers during some of the songs. But that aside, you had songs like Paper Cut, Points of Authority, With You, Runaway, Numb, Faint, In the End, and A Place for My Head. And yeah, it was great to see them. Chester's haircut was a bit dubious, like you'll see that from the pictures. I don't know what was going on with that, but it was great to see these guys, and a good way to end the 2-day festival. Okay, so next up for me was actually 4 bands in what was dubbed the New Wave of American Heavy Metal tour, and this took place at the QMU, or Queen Margaret Union, in Glasgow, and this is a really good venue actually. I went to like a few gigs around about this time, and it featured a few bands on it, like I say. So you had Chimera, Shadows Fall, God Forbid, but me and Andy were really there to see Killswitch Engage. So they put on a strong show. They played about 13 songs, and the standout track for me was Rose of Sharon. Okay, next up for me is a wee bit of pop punk with the band New Found Glory. And this was at the Barrowlands in Glasgow. So they played 22 songs, including the opening one, which was The Truth of My Youth. And they also played songs such as Hit or Miss, and probably the one that most of you would know, which is My Friends Over You. And they closed on the song All Downhill From Here. So yeah, I don't mind a bit of pop punk, but I think this might have been the only time that I saw New Found Glory. I do remember outside it, I got a t-shirt and I bargained the guy down. He was looking for 10 quid for it, and I said, oh, I've only got 8 quid. And he's like, I'll just take it, mate, but don't tell anyone. It was a really nice t-shirt as well. I remember it was blue with like white rims on the arms and round the collar. I had that t-shirt for several years. Okay, so the next gig I went to was Johnny Truant at the Cat House in Glasgow. And I don't really remember much about this gig, to be honest. I think this was a band that Andy liked, and I just went along for the ride. And yeah, I listened to them like earlier, and it's not really my cup of tea. It's a bit too nosebleed for me. And yeah, I can't really add anything more. I don't really remember the gig, to be honest. Okay, so next up for me was a bit of a heavy show, and this was called the Unholy Alliance Tour, and this featured Slipknot and Slayer. And this was £25, which I remember thinking at the time was quite a lot of money. I know it doesn't seem like a lot now, but I remember thinking, oh, a bit pricey, do I want to go to that? So I'm pretty sure that Slayer were up first, but I'm quite happy to be corrected because it is going back 20 odd years. So I think they were on first, and they played 14 songs, and I will proclaim not to be the biggest Slayer fan. Some of it's a bit too hardcore for me, but I do enjoy some of the songs, such as Angel of Death and South of Heaven, and they came out and did an encore with 2 songs and finished on Rain and Blood. Okay, so last up, and I'm pretty sure it was them that closed it out, was Slipknot, and they did 13 songs, closing in Surfacing Again. So what I quite enjoyed about this is they mixed it up from the show in June, which was obviously only 4 months prior, and this time they had 5 songs from the Subliminal Verses and 4 from both Slipknot and Iowa. So they closed in Surfacing, and it also featured songs such as Duality, Spit It Out, Vermilion, The Blister Exists, and Iowa itself. So yeah, a heavy night, and that probably is about as heavy as I can sort of tolerate it, and even some of the songs that were played from these shows was a wee bit too nosebleed stuff for me, but it's one of those ones to tick off and see. Okay, so next up for me was another pop punk band, and this was Bowling for Soup, and that was at the O2, or the Carlin Academy as it was back then. So this was in the Hangover You Don't Deserve tour, and they played songs such as Punk Rock 101, The Bitch Song, Girls All the Bad Guys Want, and the catchy 1985. So yeah, I quite like a bit of pop punk, I was into that, and New Found Glory and All American Rejects and stuff like that. So it was a good show. I remember the lead singer, Jarrett, he was quite funny. Reminds me of a way like Steel Panther in terms of the humour, talking to the audience. Okay, so now to a gig which I'll remember for one reason only, and that was the support, and not even the second support, but the third support. So this was a gig that took place at the garage, and it featured 36 Crazy Fists, and it's not even on the ticket, but I also had 18 Visions and Bullet for My Valentine. So yes, that is the reason that this stands out for me. So myself and Andy, we went and we caught all three bands, and Bullet did stick out to me. I've gone on record saying this a couple of times if you watch my Bullet documentary. So obviously didn't know what the songs were called, but they obviously made up part of the songs that would form the Poison on it. It probably was the likes of Hand of Blood, Curses and Just Another Star. And yeah, just the kind of hooky choruses and the screeching from Jay and Matt Tuck vocals. I was like, wow, we need to look out for these guys. So obviously being third on the bill, like they only played about 5 or 6 songs. Next up on it we had 18 Visions, and they were on their Obsession tour, and I first came across them. Again, there was a song, it was on one of these like Metal Hammer monthly CDs, and I can't remember the song they had, or was it a cover? I think they did a cover of a Guns N' Roses song, which was pretty good. It was either Sweet Child of Mine or Paradise City, and stumbled across them, but I don't really remember too much from that gig, from their performance. But last up, who we bought the tickets for was 36 Crazy Fists. What a name for a band, eh? So this was part of the Snow-Capped Romance tour, and I think they put on a good show from memory. Was looking forward to them playing at the end of August in Destroy the Map, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that they did play that, but yeah, that gig or that night will just be remembered really for seeing Bullet for My Valentine for the first time. Okay, so next up was Hoobastank at the QMU. So back there again, and this is a good venue. I like this one. You've got a small rectangular area just down from the stage. The stage is risen quite a bit above it, I think, from memory. And then up the top, you've got a seating area which is kind of overlooking onto the stage. So we were sat there for the Killswitch Engage and for this gig. So we had a cracking view, but you feel like you're really close to the stage. So this was called the Reason Tour, and it was named because they had the album out the year before, The Reason, and they played songs from that and from their first album. So they played the likes of Out of Control, Crawling in the Dark, Running Away, Pieces, and I can't remember if they closed on this, but they certainly played it. I remember singing along to the song The Reason, and I'm sure probably most of you have heard that. I mean, it's quite a slow, cheesy song, but I like it. So yeah, that was good to see these guys. Okay, next up for me was Lost Prophets, and it says here this was at the Barrowlands, but I'm pretty sure this was at the SECC. So I think it was upgraded, must have been upgraded due to popular demand. If anyone can remember this that's watching, then let me know, but I'm 99% convinced that I'm right, that this was at the SECC. I mean, when I look at Setlist FM, it's got the SECC, and I do recall going there certainly to see them once, so I think it was this show. But anyway, I'm havering. So they played 14 songs. They opened up with To Hell We Ride, and they closed on Shinobi versus Dragon Ninja. They also played quite a lot of songs from the Start Something album, as you would expect, seeing as it was this tour. So you had the hits such as Last Summer, Goodbye Tonight, and the anthemic Last Train Home. So yeah, I was big into this band. You know, I thought they were really good and enjoyed the show. It was quite busy. Not a favourite venue of mine, the old Scottish Exhibition Conference Centre, and glad that we've got the Hydro now to replace it. Okay, next up, again, this was seen another band I'd already seen earlier in the year, but this was Machine Head. And this definitely was at the Barrowlands. So I couldn't actually find the set list from the Glasgow show, but I found some set lists from shows just after it, and they all looked to be similar, so I'm pretty sure we can go with this. So they opened with Imperium, which they did at Download as well, and they closed on the song Block. They also had songs in there such as 10 Ton Hammer, The Blood, The Sweat, The Tears, Bulldozer, which was good to hear, and Davidian. And then, judging by it, and it does kind of ring a bell, they came on and they did encores, so they did a couple of Iron Maiden songs. They did The Trooper and Run to the Hills. I don't know if any of you have heard, but they do a really good cover of Hallowed Be Thy Name. I've got that in one of my playlists. Like, check that out if you like a bit of Maiden. Machine Head's cover of it is really, really good. And they also did Territory by Sepultura, and they did a cover of Creeping Death by Metallica. Okay, next up is another band which I'd already seen this year, and they're favourites of mine. You might be able to guess it. It was the Wildhearts. And that was at the Garage in Glasgow. So they played 17 songs, which was good, off of 8 different albums. 4 were the most from one album, which was The Wildhearts Must Be Destroyed, which was obviously their most recent album from 2003. So they opened with Love Shit, and this went straight into Red Light, Green Light. They also played songs such as Sick of Drugs, Everlone, 29 Times the Pain, Weekend. They also did a cover of the Cheers theme tune, and they closed on Caprice. So yeah, a really strong set, one of the strongest sets from the Wildhearts. Seen them at a gig. Well, I suppose it depends what you like, but for my viewing or for my listening pleasure, I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up for me was a first, and this was seeing the Manic Street Preachers at the Scottish Exhibition Conference Centre, and this was as part of the Lifeblood tour, and they played 22 songs on the night, so you definitely get your money's worth at a Manic Street Preachers gig, because the ones from the 2 shows I went to recently, they played like 22 or 23 songs, so that's good to see. But anyway, they played I Live to Fall Asleep from that Lifeblood album on this tour, and that's my favourite song from that album. And just doing a bit of research, I actually feel quite privileged that I got to hear that, because they haven't played that live, according to the records, since 2005. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going by what it says in the set list, but I feel quite privileged I got to hear that song because it's my favourite one. Aside from that, they obviously had hits such as La Tristeza, Dear Era, You Stole the Sun from My Heart, You Love Us, Kevin Carter, and they closed on A Design for Life, and they had Motorcycle Emptiness second last. So a wee bit of a change up, because when I saw them in 2021 and then this year, you know, they normally play those songs quite early. Like Motorcycle Emptiness is normally sort of second or third on the bill, and A Design for Life is like somewhere in the middle. So interesting. I mean, obviously really strong songs to finish with, but yeah, I wonder what makes bands change what songs they're going to play last. You know, I know some bands religiously stick, don't they, to playing the same song last, but yeah, interesting one. Okay, second last gig of the year, and this was actually the following night from the Manic Street Preachers, but me and Andy, we went to King Tut's Wawa Hut in Glasgow, which is a small venue, probably holds about 150, 200 people. But anyway, we were there to see 2 bands really. It featured a band, Every Time I Die, but I don't really remember much from their set. But first up in the bill, it was Bullet for My Valentine, and also on the ticket you might notice Atreyu. But yeah, Bullet for My Valentine, again, like the show beforehand with 36 Crazy Fists, it was just more of the same. In fact, it probably was the same set list that they played, 5 or 6 songs, which would go on to form part of the Poison album. And it just confirmed in Andy and I's mind that basically, yeah, this band's got something, they're going places. So this was a good wee gig in a nice small intimate venue, and it was great to see Atreyu play for the first time and also to catch Bullet for the second time. Okay, so thanks for bearing with me, guys. So the last gig of the year, and this was actually the night after a trio, which was the night after the Manic Street Preachers, so 3 gigs in a row, Tuesday, Wednesday, and this was on a Thursday night, and it was Maiden Scotland. And this was the first time seeing these guys, and the other tribute band that I'd seen before this was Iron McMaiden, and I thought that maybe Maiden Scotland had changed their name from Iron McMaiden to Maiden Scotland, but no, according to the guys, because I did ask them on Facebook, I says, look, did you used to be called this? But no, they didn't. So they were only established in 2004. And I don't think Martin, who's the lead singer at the moment, was their singer at the time. I think he joined a couple of years later. So I'm not going to stand here or sit here and lie to you about remembering this gig, because I've seen them so many times, and it's hard to know what songs they would play because they cover so many different albums. But I'm sure it was probably a good night, and I'm probably glad that I didn't have any more gigs that week. So that kind of finished off the year for me. Okay, so in my next video of the Relive the Music series, I'll be talking about the year 2005. And in that video, I'll touch on the Taste of Chaos tour and my very first download festival, which featured bands such as Feeder, Black Sabbath and System of a Down. And I'll also be talking about the first time I saw a supergroup which contained former members of Guns N' Roses. Let me know in the comments if you can guess who that is. I'm sure probably most of you do. Okay guys, that's the end of the video, so I just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have watched or listened to this all the way through. It really does mean a lot to me. There were some nice comments from E&C and from Good Guy Chucky, who says it takes him down memory lane when I'm talking about these bands and albums. So that's the reason I'm doing these videos, to throw up memories. I think music's quite special like that. It can bring back memories when you hear songs or hear albums, and that's the whole point. So yeah, like I normally say, if you were at any of these gigs or these events, or you saw the bands on the tours, then let me know in the comments. And it'd also be helpful and nice if you could leave a like, and feel free to share the video as well. So until the next time, have a good day guys.